Okay, so let's talk about what I read in the month of September. Now, I did actually only get to 3 of the 4 potential books that I wanted to. However, what did I even forget about? I subbed in Warbreaker for something, and then I went through a reading slump for like a week and a half where Warbreaker took me about twice as long as it should have. Um, what did I forget? Frankenstein? What? I don't even remember my own TBR. Oh yeah, of course, Lord of Chaos. Sorry, Wheel of Time. Yeah, I just mentioned that I need to get back to Wheel of Time, but that's still gonna sit on the back burners for now. I definitely did not read that last month. So let's talk about what I did read. Starting with book 2 of the Great Coats by Sebastian de Castell, which is Night Shadow. So this book was a fantastic follow-up to Trader's Blade. I do have a review up for this book in its entirety as well. This really built upon the foundation that was Trader's Blade. You're, of course, still following Falkio. It's a single-person POV book. You do actually get a lot more character growth out of the secondary characters in this story. But really, this is a story of Falkio, effectively told by Falkio. He does a lot of, winks to the camera, breaking the fourth wall kind of things. These books are hilarious. This book, however, it kept the same fantastic pacing of book 1 and up the scale of some of the battles as well, but it also built on the tension and especially the grimdark atmosphere that I wasn't really expecting. There was a little bit of it in book 1. Book 2 ramped that up like crazy. There are chapters in this book that are just so hard to get through sometimes because of the pain and torture that certain characters go through, and just the entire I'm not going to spoil it, but like if you've read this book, you know exactly what the lament is, you know what I'm talking about. There were some serious dark moments in this story, mixed in with, of course, the fantastic dialogue that you always get from Falkio, Kest, and Brasti. These characters are hilarious. Sebastian has a way with writing dialogue that just really keeps you engaged, and I know some people were turned off a little bit at, I guess, the redundancy of the quips and how they make fun of each other and poke jabs at each other. I love it. I'm here for it. I would watch these 3 characters just do anything. I mean, this book could be about nothing but these characters talking for 600 pages, and it would probably be fantastic because they are hilarious. Beyond the comedy, you learn a lot more about the Saints and their involvement in this story. You learn more about Kest and Brasti specifically, as well as, of course, building on Falkio's character. While book 1 had a ton of flashbacks for Falkio, that is subdued a little bit in this book, which I appreciated because you already got a lot of that backstory through his flashbacks, and you still get a little bit of that this book, but it does a lot less of it. And as I said in my review, there's a much the reliance on Deus Ex Machina and things just kind of happening that are, sort of convenient to the plot, that is happening far less. And when it does happen, it's at least explained or foreshadowed way better than it was in book 1. There is a particular point of contention towards the end of the book that I know some people felt like wasn't earned, but it was. I would push back on that a little bit because what happens is set up. It's not, you don't see a lot of these things, and I think that's why this seems like some things come out of nowhere, because you're in Falkio's POV. Maybe it's a bit of a cheat for an author to keep it in single person POV because they can get away with a lot of things behind the scenes that you don't see. I just see it as, okay, this is Falkio's story. He wouldn't know about this happening, or he wouldn't know about that setup, or this character doing something and, coming to save the day, whatever it may be. He's not always going to know that. And that was the same thing like Red Rising. You see everything through Darrow's eyes through that entire first trilogy. Yeah, some things are going to happen that you're not aware of because you wouldn't be aware of it. You're in the main character's POV. So I love these books. I am starting Saint's Blood right away. That's going to be my first read in October. If you've watched my October TBR, you'll know that. And then quickly going into Edge Dancer. No, I'm not. That's a lie. I'm going into Dune after that, which I'm super excited about. Then Edge Dancer, which I already don't like Lift, but we'll talk about that. So yeah, let's move on. All right, so next up, I was convinced by everybody that Warbreaker has to be read before Words of Radiance. Spoiler alert, no, it doesn't. I actually have a full review of this as well, and I am happy that I read it because I actually really, really liked this book. It was a fantastic standalone for the time being. I know it is getting a sequel, uh, whatever, 5 years from now or whatever it is. And I loved the characters. I loved the sort of vagueness of the magic system and just how colors function in this world, to the point that I don't think it needs to be read before Words of Radiance. I just finished Words of Radiance yesterday. And while there are Easter eggs and there are certain winks and nods and things that happen in Words of Radiance, while there are sort of Easter eggs and winks at, hey, like if you've read Warbreaker, you'll understand this reference, that's about it. I could easily have not read Warbreaker yet and it not changed any of my opinions about Words of Radiance. So I could see somebody being like, oh, like that would have been a little bit cooler if I had read Warbreaker first. When I do see something pop up in Words of Radiance, it doesn't actually affect the book. You could definitely read this before Oathbringer, which I'm told is when more of this actually comes into play. So whether you read this before or after Words of Radiance, as long as you get to it before Oathbringer, that's probably the best approach. I actually really like this book, though. There's not a lot of action, but when it does happen, Sanderson, of course, kicks ass writing action. This was, like I said in my review, some of the best characters that I've seen him write personally. Stormlight is blowing everything out of the water for him as far as character work. It's by far his best character work, but Warbreaker is a close second. Everybody from Ciri to Vivenna to Susebron, Lightsong, even, Vasher with Nightblood. The characters were fantastic. Of course, I mentioned the mercenaries, Tongfa, and I'm already forgetting names, but they were fantastic as well. The plot was super cool. I did feel like it kind of ended a little bit abruptly at the end of it, but there's going to be a sequel, so maybe we'll get some more explanation to that, or maybe in another Cosmere book. We'll see, but overall I liked it. I don't think you need to read a nearly 700-page book pre-Words of Radiance to get the full effect. It was like, oh yeah, cool, I recognize that. All right. Like, it was not like a super impactful thing to read Warbreaker before Words of Radiance, but I'm happy I did because I did enjoy the book a lot. And finally, the Chonky Boy that I got to this last week, which this I expected to take me 11 to 14-ish days. I think it was on my Goodreads since like 3 weeks ago because I had started it. I read like 40 pages before I started Warbreaker. I think I read this in about a week. So when I went through that little minor reading slump with Warbreaker that took me forever, which is why I didn't get to Lord of Chaos, I pretty much flew through Words of Radiance, and it is because it's fantastic. Where I thought Way of Kings was overhyped because people kept talking about how it's the greatest fantasy ever, it makes a lot more sense now, because Words of Radiance is one of the best books that I've read all year. It will probably remain one of the best books that I read for a while. I don't think I've been this attached to a Sanderson character at all. And I'm currently thinking about like what a kind of top 10 list of fantasy characters that I've read would be. And I'm finding it very hard to not include Dalinar, Kaladin, and Shallan in that. So whatever top 10 list I do come up with is going to have an awful lot of Sanderson on it because, I mean, Stormlight just kicks so much ass. I'm working on a full review for Words of Radiance, so I'm not going to say too much about it now, but this 100% lived up to the hype. I am absolutely in love with the Stormlight Archive now. I can't wait to get to Oathbringer next month before Rhythm of War comes out in November. Just everything that was built on in Way of Kings, I appreciate a lot more now, and especially with like the character work. So when I complained about like Kaladin's chapters in the Way of Kings, I thought it was kind of sloggy, like getting through how depressed he was and bridge runs, and I totally appreciate it now, which I kind of expected that was going to happen, because this book for me kind of hit the ground running, and the more you learn about Kaladin and who he becomes in this story, and that goes for Shallan and Dalinar as well. Kaladin specifically, from book 1 to book 2, you really feel for him. And when he has a certain moment in this book with another character, and they're just discussing, their lives and just how broken they can be. It's just The way that Sanderson has treated these characters is fantastic. You really get emotional for them at times. You really feel their struggles and their internal battles that they're going through in their life. It really shows you a great way to handle characters that can be both strong and also suffer from depression. You can see how someone can overcome really terrible things that have happened in their lives and in their families. So the character work is second to none as of right now from everything that I've read this year. And pretty much every scene with these characters is impactful. And this book completely dunks on Way of Kings, in my opinion. The battle scenes, the combat, everything was fantastic. There's a particular scene in this book that happens where it was like watching Dragon Ball Z episode. It was just insane. I don't know, man. It's just like Stormlight is so awesome. I might still like Allomancy a little bit more right now, but Stormlight just, it's so diverse and there's so many variables involved. It's really just an awesome magic system. Everything is just so unique and creative with the story. I just really loved everything about this book, and I think that's why I went through it so much faster than I did even with The Way of Kings. It's just, this story is so good, and I don't know what to expect out of Oathbringer or Rhythm of War yet, but it's absolutely fantastic. This totally lived up to the hype. I'm obviously going to start doing more Stormlight content. I mean, the stuff is so good. There's so much detail and things to dive into with this that I want to make that more of a mainstay on the channel as I continue through this series. So I will do a spoiler-free review of Words of Radiance. I will likely do a spoiler talk as well. And honestly, I might have to do some like character deep dives or something, more in-depth things once I read Oathbringer and I'm completely caught up to Rhythm of War, just because this story is so great. Yeah, I mean, this kicks ass, man. I don't know how else to put it. It's great. One negative thing right now is I got a taste of Lift. That interlude was probably the worst part of this book. I guess my biggest complaint about Lift being included at all in this story is, much like other people have said, she feels very out of place. Now, I understand in Words of Radiance it's an interlude, so like the interludes are kind of out of place anyway, but I'm going to read Edgedancer, and it's just a novella, so like I can put up with it for, 250 pages, whatever it is. But even in that little example that I got from like the 40 pages or however long that interlude was, I'm not looking forward to her character. I'll put it that way. Open to change my mind about it, but just, she's very childish, talking about how buildings look like boobs. Sanderson, really, she has awesomeness. Like, I rag on you all the time for your fake swear words, but then you just say she has awesomeness. And it's just like, is this some like middle grade story? What are we talking about? Anyway, it didn't detract from the book. It's completely out of place. I don't understand why she's in it, but Words of Radiance was fantastic. One of the best books I've read all year long. There will be a full review and a lot more Stormlight content coming up on the channel, so please stay tuned for that. If you haven't already watched my October TBR, I do mention that I'm reading Edgedancer and Oathbringer next month. And then, of course, I'm starting Rhythm of War day 1 when it comes out on the 17th of November. My plan is immediately following Oathbringer, I'm going to read through the 7 or however many chapters are released for Rhythm of War, so I'll already kind of have a head start by the time the book comes out. As long as my order comes in on time, I will have that in hand on day 1. Stay tuned tomorrow where I pick my 2 winners for my Rhythm of War giveaway. So I'll explain how that's going to work in my video, and I will pick the winners for that. After I finish up Oathbringer, I will have read the entire Cosmere, I think, except for the short stories in Arcanum Unbounded, so that's a feat that I didn't expect to reach this year, but I'm loving it so far. Stormlight's definitely climbing up the ranks of my favorite series now, and I'm looking forward to continue it. So that's going to wrap it up for this one. As always, jump in the Discord if you want to keep the conversation going. Drop in the comments down below. Let me know your opinions on Stormlight Archive in general, what your favorite books are. If you've read any of the Great Coats, that Read It Along is continuing over on Mike's channel. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend those books. Feel free to support me on Patreon as well if you do enjoy the content and you want to join there. You get some awesome Discord roles and some other things coming up, so feel free to do that if that is something that interests you. As always, like and subscribe, hit the bell notification so you are aware of when I do upload videos, because sometimes it doesn't, I guess, get pushed to people right away. But that's going to do it for this wrap up of the month of September. And until next time, everybody, keep reading.